The first question I will be answering is discussing the issue of social responsibility in business. So when we're looking at social responsibility relating to businesses, there are several issues that really come to surface. The idea of social responsibility, which is responsibilities that can relate to your family, friends, your community, religious groups, your country, or even the world, is kind of hard to distinguish when trying to find a balance between this idea of having a certain level of social responsibility and one's own self interest. When we apply this idea to business, it becomes a highly debated topic as to whether or not businesses should have this certain level of social responsibility or not. So when we ask this question as to whether or not businesses have to apply ideas of social responsibility, we are faced with a practice that many businesses do participate in, which is called the profit motive. So the profit motive states that businesses should always maximize profits, and all other ethical concerns or concerns within the company should basically be put on the back burner, which would include social responsibility. So basically, nothing is more important than profit and maximizing it. So the profit motive can be pretty unethical because businesses are disregarding many things, such as their own employees and their well-being, such as their mental health and physical health, in order to maximize the amount of money that they could potentially make. By focusing strictly on this profit motive, these businesses could also potentially be hurting society by ignoring, for example, policies put in place that could harm the environment and many other things such as that. These businesses could also be participating in unethical practices such as lying to get the maximum profit possible as well. So many argue that these corporations and businesses are focusing on the profit motive and are seeing success from it should have an increased sense of social responsibility and an obligation to benefit society as a whole because they are making so much money. Critics say that they should be giving back to the people and communities that are supporting their business or product that they are selling because they have this surplus amount of money and these people are supporting their business. However, on the other hand, others argue that businesses have an ethical obligation to their shareholders to maximize profit since they are investing so much money into their business. Also, since shareholders own parts of bigger businesses or firms, they are also receiving money from these businesses that are becoming successful from the profit motive. And while businesses should be really doing what they can to make their shareholders happy and the most money possible, they should be doing it in the most ethical way possible, which may not be the profit motive. So, a theory created by Edward Freeman called the stakeholder theory of the modern corporation is a theory that states that rather than considering just stockholders as the investors of a business, all the suppliers, the customers, employees, and the local community, or anyone that's really putting anything to help make this business successful, are all stakeholders of businesses. So stakeholders are groups of people or individuals who can benefit from or be harmed by corporate actions. So they could have their rights violated or their rights would be greatly supported in this example. But Freeman describes this theory as this because there are people that are helping the business create and sell products. There's people who buy the products, and there's people who actually support the business itself and help it become successful that are just not investors in the business because it takes a village to make something successful. It is arguable that businesses do have this social responsibility to anyone who would be considered a stakeholder in a business because of how much they are putting into that company as well. However, if businesses were to follow this social responsibility, it could really hurt their potential overall profit, which would go against the profit motive because in the profit motive, you're only supposed to be focusing on maximizing profit instead of giving back to the community by, for example, making a donation to someone as a high schooler in a club. It's kind of a tough line to distinguish as to how much businesses should really give back and what kind of limitations should be put in place in order to still be making the most possible profit for their stockholders, but still giving back to their community and the people that are stakeholders in this business. The second question I'll be answering is regarding to case study 9.1. So case study 9.1 describes a case between Colin Brewster and a consumer group. Brewster owns a bicycle shop that also sells skateboards. He recently put out an ad that was broadcasted on television that demonstrated kids doing hard and dangerous tricks on skateboards that are quite difficult to learn. The consumer group came into his store and said that they had ample evidence that skateboards were a hazard to consumer safety and said that he should stop sharing this misleading advertising and instead advertise the dangers of skateboarding and that anyone buying a skateboard should know how dangerous they are. Brewster disagrees with their statements, and the group says that they will come back and protest his shop if he does not take these steps within a week. So, the main moral dilemma in this case is whether or not Brewster should inform his customers of the dangers of skateboarding, even though it could potentially affect his business negatively and hurt his profit. The stakeholders in this case are Colin Brewster, the consumer group, and his potential future customers that are buying skateboards. So, the first moral theory that comes to mind when looking at this case is the idea of social responsibility. This is the idea that you have responsibilities dedicated to your family, friends, community, religious groups, your country, or even the world. When applying this idea to business, the profit motive is what we are dealing with. Profit motive states that businesses should always prioritize profits over everything. So in this situation, if Brewster uses the profit motive to run his business, he should not advertise that skateboarding is dangerous. Letting customers know the dangers of skateboarding would ultimately hurt the profit coming into his business because less people would buy the product due to the fact that they could be scared of getting injured from skateboarding. If he also does not start informing customers of the dangers, however, he would have to deal with protesters being outside of his business. The second moral theory that comes to mind is the stakeholder theory of the modern corporation. This theory considers not only investors as stockholders, but the suppliers, the customers, which is important in this case, employees, and the local community, which is also important in this case, as stakeholders. These are the people that can either benefit from or be harmed by the actions of a business. So this theory applies to this case because the customers buying the skateboards would be considered stakeholders of this business. By not informing these stakeholders the dangers of skateboarding, Brewster could potentially be harming their physical health. They could be getting injuries such as concussions or even breaking bones like the consumer group discussed with him earlier in the case. If this theory was applied to this case, Brewster would have a social responsibility to these customers to tell them of the dangers despite the fact that it could hurt him and his business. So in conclusion, I do not think that Brewster should really have to inform customers of the dangers of skateboarding. I feel that it should really be common knowledge that skateboarding is dangerous and that parents should watch over their children if they believe that they could potentially get hurt while skateboarding or just not let their child get a skateboard in the first place. Letting customers know the dangers of skateboarding could severely hurt the profit of his business and have less people coming in. Also, I think it's important to note that Brewster is not the one riding the skateboards, he's simply selling them. The customer is responsible for how it is used, not Brewster.